The painful revelation of being the starter husband, a deeply emotional journey through betrayal, heartbreak, unanswered questions, the battle to rebuild trust, the struggle with the fear of being replaced, and the long road toward forgiveness in a relationship that shattered my understanding of love and commitment. Everything was fine. Or at least, it seemed fine. I thought I had the perfect life, perfect fiancé, perfect apartment, plans for the future. We'd been together for 3 years, and the idea of marriage was always on the horizon. We talked about it all the time. I thought we were on the same page. But that day, everything changed. It was a lazy Saturday morning, the kind where you just hang around the house, doing nothing in particular. She was on the phone with her best friend, as usual, while I was cleaning up a bit, going through some old boxes in the closet. We were doing this thing where we decided to get rid of the stuff we didn't need, to start fresh for when we eventually moved in together. It felt like a small step towards our future. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. But it was hard not to. Her voice was loud enough that I could catch every word. And I suppose, in a way, I was just curious about how she talked to her friends when I wasn't around. We all have our insecurities, right? At first, it was just the usual stuff, plans for the weekend, what she was thinking of wearing for our dinner date. But then, something shifted. She mentioned me. I didn't think anything of it at first, but then I heard her say something that made me freeze. Yeah, he's just my starter husband. You know, the one before the real deal. My heart stopped. It felt like someone physically ripped the air out of my lungs. I couldn't breathe. I stood still in the closet, trying to process the words, the meaning behind them. I'm not sure why I was so shocked. It wasn't like she was calling me names, but the implication was there. I wasn't the one she saw herself with forever. I was just a placeholder, someone to pass the time with before she found someone better. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. I just stood there, trying to get a grip on what I'd just heard. For a long moment, I didn't know what to do. Do I confront her right now? Do I act like nothing happened? I wanted to hear more, but I didn't want to be the guy who was listening in on his fiancé's private conversation. I told myself that I should walk out, act normal, and pretend I hadn't heard a thing. But I couldn't. Her voice continued, unaware that I was standing just a few feet away, my heart sinking deeper with every word. Oh, he's sweet and all, but you know, he's not the one. I think he knows it, too. I heard her friend laugh on the other end of the line, and I felt this pang of humiliation. Was she serious? Was I really that blind to the reality of our relationship? After what felt like an eternity, I finally managed to force myself to walk out of the closet, still in a daze. I tried to act like nothing was wrong, but everything inside me was twisted up. She was still on the phone, laughing about something else, totally unaware of what had just happened. I wanted to scream at her, but I didn't. I just stood there, staring at her, trying to keep my emotions in check. Who are you talking to? I asked casually, trying to keep my voice steady, even though my heart was beating faster than ever. Oh, just Sarah, she said, her eyes lighting up as she smiled at me. We were just catching up. You know, girl talk. I nodded, pretending everything was fine. But the words she'd said kept echoing in my mind. Just a starter husband. The phrase repeated in my head over and over again. What did it mean? Was she really just waiting for someone better to come along? I spent the rest of the day trying to act normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had just shifted in our relationship. There was no going back now. I didn't know what to do with what I'd heard, and part of me wanted to confront her immediately. But I didn't. I wanted to understand more. I needed to know if she meant what she said, and if so, why she'd said it. Later that night, as we lay in bed, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation in my head. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, and heard the laughter in her voice as she dismissed me. I didn't know what to do next. Was I overreacting? Should I just let it go and move on? Or was this a sign that things were worse than I thought? I didn't know. but what I did know was that I wasn't going to let this slide. Not without getting some answers. The next day, I could barely focus. My mind kept drifting back to what I had overheard. Just a starter husband. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every time I looked at her, I saw those words hanging in the air between us, unspoken but loud as ever. We spent the morning together, having breakfast, talking about mundane things. But it felt different. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was broken. She was sitting across from me, talking about some new recipe she wanted to try for dinner, but I wasn't really listening. My thoughts were elsewhere, on her. On what she'd said. Finally, as we were clearing the dishes, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know the truth. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual, but the tension in my voice was hard to hide. "Can we talk for a minute?" She looked up at me, confused but not alarmed. "Of course, what's up?" I sat down across from her, my hands trembling slightly as I clasped them together. I was trying to keep my cool, but this wasn't a conversation I wanted to have. It was a conversation I needed to have. "Yesterday," I began, choosing my words carefully, "I overheard your conversation with Sarah." She blinked, a little surprised, but quickly recovered. "Oh, yeah. You didn't say anything, so I figured it wasn't a big deal." I watched her face carefully, trying to read her reaction. She wasn't panicking or even acting suspicious, which only made me more uneasy. Was she hiding something? "I heard you call me a starter husband," I said, forcing the words out. "And I need to know what you meant by that." Her face froze for a split second, but then she smiled, as if she could laugh it off. She leaned back in her chair, brushing her hair behind her ear, clearly trying to regain control of the situation. "Oh my God," she laughed lightly, trying to make it seem like a joke. "It's not what you think. It was just girl talk. You know how we get, just joking around." I didn't laugh. My stomach tightened as I watched her try to brush it off. She wasn't even trying to apologize. She wasn't taking it seriously. "Joking around?" I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. "You really think it's funny to talk about me like that?" Her smile faltered, but she quickly regained her composure. "Come on, babe, don't be so sensitive. It's not a big deal. We were just joking. It's not like I'm serious about it." I stared at her, my thoughts racing. "Don't be so sensitive." Her words stung more than I expected. How could she brush something like that off as if it were nothing? My mind was clouded with anger, hurt, and confusion. "I don't think you understand what it feels like to hear something like that," I said, my voice quieter now, but still steady. "You called me a starter husband. That doesn't feel like a joke. It feels like you're already planning to move on." She let out a small sigh, looking a little frustrated now. "Oh, come on, don't be dramatic. I didn't mean anything by it. You're being way too serious about this." I wanted to scream, to tell her how much those words hurt. But instead, I stood up from the table and walked over to the window, staring outside, trying to clear my head. What was I supposed to do with this? Part of me wanted to believe her. Maybe it was just a careless comment, a slip of the tongue in a moment of playful banter. But another part of me couldn't ignore the fact that she was dismissing it like it was nothing. Like my feelings didn't matter. "You're not taking me seriously," I said, turning back to face her. "And that's the problem." She crossed her arms, her expression softening, but there was still a hint of defensiveness in her eyes. "I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, but it wasn't meant to be taken like that. Can we just drop it? I don't want to fight about this." I looked at her for a long time, trying to decide if I could just let it go. Could I really forgive her and move past this? Or was this a sign that something deeper was wrong? "I'm not going to just drop it," I said, my voice quieter now, but firm. "I can't just pretend like everything's fine when I've heard you talk about me like that. I need to know if you meant it." She was quiet for a moment, her face unreadable. And then, as if to change the subject, she stood up and walked over to the counter. Can we just take a break from all this? I don't want to keep rehashing it. I stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do. But something inside me snapped. I didn't want to keep pushing the issue, but I couldn't walk away from it either. I think we need some time apart, I said, finally finding the strength to say the words I had been avoiding. She turned to face me, looking more startled than anything else. What do you mean? Time apart? I nodded, my heart heavy. Yeah. I need to think about all of this. I can't pretend like it's not bothering me. The next few days were the longest of my life. After that conversation, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. It wasn't just the words she'd said, it was the way she reacted. The way she dismissed my feelings. I had never seen her act like that before. It was like I didn't matter, like I was just a placeholder in her life until something better came along. I'd told her I needed some space, and I meant it. She didn't argue when I left that morning. In fact, I think she was relieved that I was giving her the room to breathe. But the silence between us was deafening. My phone stayed quiet. No calls, no texts. It felt like she was just as eager for the break as I was. For the first time, I found myself questioning everything. I thought I knew her, I thought I could trust her. But now? Now I didn't know what to believe. What if this wasn't just a one-off mistake? What if I was just a chapter in her life, not the whole story? I tried to keep myself busy. I went for long walks, visited my family, and even met up with a few friends. Anything to keep my mind off her. But no matter how hard I tried to distract myself, her words kept coming back. Just a starter husband. The more I thought about it, the more it hurt. I kept checking my phone. Nothing. I told myself I wouldn't reach out first. I had to let her come to me. I had to let her see that I wasn't going to just forget about this. The third day after our fight, I was sitting on the couch in my apartment, staring at my phone, when it finally happened. A message. It was from her. Can we talk? I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said what I did. I miss you. My heart sank. I stared at the screen for what felt like forever, unsure of what to do. Part of me wanted to just forgive her, to move past the hurt and let things go back to normal. But another part of me couldn't ignore the feeling that something deeper was wrong. If she really cared, wouldn't she have reached out sooner? Why had she waited until now to apologize? I stared at the message for another few moments before typing a response. I wasn't ready to forgive her, but I knew I needed to talk to her, to hear her side of the story. I don't know if we're ready to just pick up where we left off. I need to hear more from you. Please come over and we'll talk. I hit send, and immediately, the doubt crept in. Was I doing the right thing? Should I just walk away? But deep down, I knew I couldn't just leave it like this. I needed answers. I needed to understand what was going on in her head. An hour later, the doorbell rang. My heart was pounding in my chest as I walked to the door. When I opened it, there she was. Her eyes were red, and her expression was serious. For the first time in days, I could see that she was vulnerable, something I hadn't noticed before. I'm sorry, she said immediately, her voice soft. I shouldn't have said those things. I don't know why I said it. It was a stupid joke, and I didn't mean to hurt you. I really didn't. I looked at her for a long moment, trying to gauge whether she was sincere. But the hurt inside me didn't just go away with an apology. It wasn't that simple. You don't just say something like that, I replied, my voice cold, though I tried to keep it steady. You don't just call someone your starter husband and expect it to be okay because it's just a joke. She stepped forward, reaching for my hand, but I pulled it back. She looked hurt by the gesture, but I couldn't let her close just yet. Not after everything. I know. I know it was wrong. I don't even know what I was thinking. But I was talking to Sarah, and we were just being silly, joking around. I didn't mean it. You're important to me. You really are. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to. but there was a part of me that still felt betrayed, a part of me that couldn't just brush it off. "Then why did you say it?" I asked, my voice cracking slightly despite myself. "Why would you talk about me like that, even if it was just a joke? I thought you cared about me. But now I don't know." She bit her lip, looking down at the floor, clearly struggling to find the right words. I could see she was genuinely remorseful, but I wasn't sure if that was enough. "I'm sorry," she said again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I really am. Please don't think I don't care about you. I do. But I didn't think it would hurt you like this." We stood there in silence for a long time. I wasn't sure what to say next. I wasn't sure if I could just forgive her and pretend like nothing happened. Finally, I spoke again. "I need time. I need time to think about all of this. I don't know if I can just let it go. You hurt me, and I need to figure out if I can trust you again." She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I understand. I just hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me." She left after that, and I was left standing in the doorway, still unsure of what to do next. I couldn't shake the feeling that things had changed between us. Even if I forgave her, would I ever feel the same again? The waiting game had begun. And I didn't know if I was ready to play. The next few days were agonizing. I spent my time pacing around the apartment, overthinking every conversation we'd ever had, every moment we'd shared. I couldn't stop running the words through my head. Starter husband. How could she say something like that? How could she laugh it off like it was nothing? The more I thought about it, the more I questioned everything I knew about our relationship. I didn't want to confront her again, not yet. She'd apologized, and I needed space to process what she had said. But every time I saw her name pop up on my phone or heard a knock on my door, my heart would race. Was she truly sorry? Or was this just another attempt to sweep it all under the rug? That morning, after a sleepless night, I decided to stop waiting for answers from her and take matters into my own hands. I had to know the truth. Was she just biding her time, waiting for someone better to come along? Or was this just a moment of weakness, a lapse in judgment? I had an idea, one that would test everything. I couldn't let this go on any longer. If I was truly just a placeholder in her life, I needed to find out. I spent the next few hours planning. I gathered a few things, including a small black box that had been sitting in my drawer for months. I had been holding onto it for a special occasion, but now it seemed like the perfect time. The box contained a necklace I had bought for her, a piece of jewelry I had always intended to give her when the time felt right. But I wasn't going to give it to her today. Instead, I was going to make a point. I carefully placed the necklace back into the box and closed it. I could already feel the weight of what I was about to do. But it had to be done. I needed to see her reaction. When she showed up later that day, I didn't greet her with the same warm smile I usually did. I was still hurt, but I was calm, collected, trying to keep my emotions in check. I didn't want her to know exactly what I was planning. I needed to see if she would be able to tell that something was off without me saying a word. She stepped inside, her face lighting up when she saw me. She came forward, but I didn't meet her with open arms. Instead, I motioned for her to sit down. "I've been thinking about everything," I said, my voice flat. "And I think it's time we take a step forward. It's time for me to make a decision about where we stand." She looked confused, but there was a hint of hope in her eyes. I could tell she wanted to apologize again, but she held herself back. She was waiting for me to speak first. I slid the black box across the table towards her. She eyed it curiously, a nervous smile playing on her lips. "What's this?" "Open it," I said, my voice steady, but my heart was racing. This was the moment. This was where I would either get the answers I was looking for, or I would walk away for good. She hesitated for a moment before picking it up. She opened the box, and her eyes widened when she saw the necklace inside. "Oh my God," she whispered, clearly touched. "Is this for me?" I nodded. It was meant to be a gift. A symbol of us. But now I don't know if I can give it to you. She blinked, confusion washing over her face. What do you mean? You're just going to keep it? I'm not sure I can trust you, I said, my voice growing more serious. The things you said, they hurt me. And I don't know if I can just move past it. I don't know if I'm still the man you want, or if I'm just some placeholder in your life until something better comes along. She froze, her fingers trembling slightly as she clutched the box. I could see the realization dawning on her, and the hurt in her eyes made my chest tighten. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I need you to be honest with me, I said, my voice softening despite myself. You owe me that. Tell me, do you see a future with me? Or am I just the starter husband? Her face flushed, and she finally met my gaze. The silence stretched between us, each second feeling like an eternity. She opened her mouth again, but then, something unexpected happened. Her eyes filled with tears, and she slowly set the box down on the table. She didn't look at the necklace, didn't touch it. Instead, she just stared at me. I never meant for you to find out, she said, her voice barely audible. I don't know why I said it. I was just scared. I was scared that maybe I wasn't good enough for you, that maybe you deserved someone better. And I panicked. I was just trying to make myself feel better. I didn't mean to hurt you. But I was selfish. I'm so sorry. For a long moment, I didn't know what to say. The truth hung in the air, heavy and real. She wasn't ready for us to take that next step, and she was struggling with her own fears about the future. But I wasn't sure if that was enough to make up for the way she had dismissed me. I don't know what to say, I whispered. I don't know if I can just forget about what you said. She stood up, taking a step toward me. I understand if you can't forgive me. But please, just give me a chance to show you that I care. I don't want to lose you. I stared at her, my heart torn between the love I still felt for her and the hurt that was still so fresh. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that we could get past this. But deep down, I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't sure if I could trust her, or if I even wanted to. The decision was mine to make. But as I looked at her, standing before me, tears streaming down her face, I realized something. Maybe she was telling the truth. Maybe this wasn't about finding someone better, but about her fear of not being enough. Could I forgive her? Could we rebuild what had been broken? Only time would tell.